Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be reading some more Reddit stories related to life after death experiences. More replies to Redditors who have died and come back to life. What did you see? Asked by Alaska Stiletto. Hybrid STL says, my dad had appendicitis and basically didn't treat immediately until it burst. He tried to crawl to his car and a neighbor saw him and drove him to an ER a mile away. He had passed out before they got into surgery, but he said when he passed out, he had a conversation with his dad, who had died before I was born. I was in first or second grade when this happened. His dad sat with him and told him not to worry and that it wasn't his time yet. He told him that we would all be together one day and not to worry about anything. Anytime someone dies or something bad happens, he has a super peaceful demeanor and reminds us of what happened to him, and in the end, it will all be okay. My wife's grandmother died when we were in college, and she was in the hospital for a while with lung cancer. At some point towards the end, she started talking to her husband, who had been dead for a decade or so, saying something about not being ready to go yet. Her grandfather, from her other side, had something similar where he, at 87, suffering from prostate cancer that had spread well before his diagnosis, would quietly talk to his mother, who had passed long before, on and off, for the last week that he was alive. Wow, OP, you have a lot of comforting stories, and it must have been really nice to know from such a young age that you could have that comfort from your father, having seen what he saw. A lot of us suffer for years and years of worrying when we lose a loved one and wondering if we'll ever get to see them again or what happens when we die. So it's really cool to hear about your family's experiences. Sad Proctologist says, I felt a sudden jolt of pain, and then everything went black. I was floating in a void, with no sense of time or space. I heard a faint voice calling my name, but I couldn't answer. I saw flashes of memories, like a slideshow of my life. I felt a surge of emotions, from joy to sorrow, from love to regret. I wondered if this was the end or the beginning of something else. Then I felt another jolt, stronger than the first. I opened my eyes and saw a bright light. I heard a loud beep and a voice saying, he's back. I felt a tube in my throat and wires on my chest. I realized I was in a hospital, surrounded by doctors and nurses. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I felt confused and scared. I didn't know what had happened or what would happen next. I had died and come back to life, but I didn't know why or how. I've heard stories from other people too about seeing their life flash before their eyes, and it makes me wonder what causes the brain to come up with the specific memories that it chooses for people to see. I wonder what memories I would see. It's interesting. Alyssy Moo says, 2 years ago, an autoimmune disorder slowly shut down all my organs and eventually my heart. Not sure exactly how long I was gone for, but long enough for a nurse to call my mom, who was halfway across the country at the time, and tell her I wasn't responding to CPR. First, it felt like I took the biggest sigh of relief I ever felt. I heard muffled voices around me, and then eventually it was quiet. I couldn't exactly see anything, but I felt like I was in a damp, cold cave. Like the walls were long, but still close enough to make me claustrophobic. I couldn't exactly feel my body, but it was freezing, and when I opened my mouth, it seemed like I should have heard my voice echo, but nothing came out. I wasn't afraid, but felt an overwhelming loneliness. To me, I was there for hundreds of years, just an endless amount of time going by. The only memories I knew were the ones I made myself forget when I was alive. Then I woke up in a locked-in paralysis state of which lasted 5 months, and let me tell you, I would have preferred that nothingness over all the pain I eventually went through. Although I'm in a much better place now, and actually quite content with my life. Well, that one's a lot similar to the last post, but way scarier. Something about being in a timeless, dark, cold place for hundreds of years and only being able to remember things that you wanted to forget sounds like a nightmare. Coyote Laughter says, nothing. One moment I was alive and giving information to the ER intake nurse, and the next thing I know, it's 3 weeks later. I've lost 8 pounds due to dialysis, and there was nothing in between. It wasn't dark or light. There was no sense of self, no void, no drifting, no sense of sentience. It was like a switch was flipped off and then later flipped on. I only remember fever dreams after they brought me back. but most of those were still influenced by the shitty ads and cooking shows on the hospital TV in my room, since my sister and the nurse left it on the entire time I was incapacitated. You've never really had effed up dreams till you're dreaming about an upside down pyramid spaceship in an urgent descent through its bowels to capture the mastermind that stole your duck recipe. Evidently, my sister was watching Stargate and those cooking ads hosted by famous chefs trying to sell air fryers. I think the upside down ship was due to the Poseidon adventure about a capsized ocean liner. These were all the shows my sister watched while sitting at my bedside, according to her. It kind of explains the dreams a bit. Well, I don't know if the idea that you're here one second and gone the next is terrifying or comforting, but I don't know, maybe more comforting compared to that last story with the dark hundreds of years in a dark cave. But it's funny how the shows that your sister was watching made their way into your dreams. Why couldn't she have been watching something like Bob Ross painting or SpongeBob? It's pretty funny. I mean, it could have been worse. She could have been watching, horror movies. Pope Fenderson II says, I didn't see anything, honestly. I felt amazing peace. Like being in the softest bed you can imagine with the best warm blankets. No pain, no fear, just amazing peace. It was coming back that sucked. Being ripped out of that beautiful comfort and shoved back into a body that was pretty messed up from the event that caused my passing. I was pretty resentful for a long time while I healed, if I'm being honest. Well, I have some chronic pain issues too, OP, and you do make a great point that if I was able to experience what it feels like to be completely free of pain from this physical body and then feel all that peace and comfort and then be shoved back into this painful body again, I think I'd be resentful too. But hopefully when you're old and gray and you've lived a long life, you'll get to feel that comforting peace again one day. Me too, I hope. Panic Switch says, partner and I were in a serious car accident. Kind of felt like I was floating in a pool, looking up at a dark sky. You know, kind of like when you're just lounging and have your face out of the water with your ears underwater. I don't really remember what we were saying or being said, but it just kind of felt like I did when my partner and I would chill outside on a warm day reading or just talking, but not like really anything visual or anything like that. Just feelings of those kind of moments. Felt like a very long time, and like no time at all. Very odd to quantify. Then I felt like my partner got up and abruptly said, gotta go, I'll see you later. I tried to say, let's go, and she just said, not yet, I'll see you later. And then I was getting extracted from the car, and various pangs of the next day or so before regaining sentience. The following evening, when my friends, my family was still in transit, went to break the news to me about my partner. I just kind of dumbly said, yeah, I know. I talked to her before she had to go. We don't know if I flatlined or anything, but according to the doctors, they said that the EMTs were having trouble getting any responses from me for a bit, but that I just kind of became responsive all of a sudden while they were trying to get me out. Lizzie Jean Peters replied to that, I'm so sorry about your partner. How long ago was this? How do you feel about death now? Have you physically healed? And OP replies, 17 years next February. I came to terms with it a very long time ago, but it stays with you in various ways. I physically healed fairly well with no serious long-term issues than soreness and joint pain that sticks around periodically. In terms of death, I don't know if my feelings about it have really changed other than being broken of any illusion that it's far away nowadays. It took some time to reacclimate to that. I had a few fears of just being alone or abandoned and forgotten, but I think those are kind of natural after loss. I went through a few phases and spent a few years where I wanted to be really connected with people and known, which then pivoted to having an impact, so I could avoid being forgotten. Those led to poor quality friendships and relationships, and eventually realized it was more about quality of relationships than quantity, and just focused on having good, high quality, and high integrity relationships with people. I try to live in a way that my family, friends, and colleagues would be happy with their time with me if I kicked the bucket tomorrow. Another experience of that floating peacefulness. I personally love the feeling of floating on my back and just letting the water take me wherever on a warm summer day, so that part sounds really nice. It almost sounds like your partner saying goodbye is maybe what caused you to come back while the EMTs were trying to get you out of there. It's really sad that your partner didn't make it, though, but at least she was able to tell you goodbye. That maybe is some way comforting. I really like your new outlook of living, though, in a way that you feel like you spend as much quality time as possible with the people important to you, and you try to live in a way that they feel like they got that good quality time. Future Tough 5111 says, I'm seeing so many interesting comments about floating and peaceful warmth. I wonder if that's how it feels to be in the womb. Calm, dark, warm, and floating, like you go out of this world the same way you came in. I've read a theory that warm, floating feeling is our next life starting, that we're back in the womb, and then those bright light and tunnels are us re entering the world. The theory also says we remember who we are, but as time goes on, we forget as we grow into our new life, and that's why some kids talk about and remember their past lives, because they just lived it and came back in their new one. It's a cool theory. That's the first time I ever heard that theory, and I agree that it's pretty cool. Like, life literally coming full circle like that is a really interesting concept to think about. I've always been a little sad about how, you only have one life to live and you can only do so much in one life. So even if we can't remember our past lives, it's neat to think about, maybe you don't have just one life. Paladin Wolf 777 says, I will never forget that night. The peace is unlike any other. The world literally feels like a nightmare compared to it. It's as if life is a dream and you're waking up from it. I meditate on the feeling often. I know I will return to it one day, but I will live for what it is down here until then. I've always envied people that have had a life after death experience that gives them that comfort of knowing that there's such an amazing peacefulness after you die. Like, it must make, life a little less hard to get through when you know that at the end it's something safe and warm and comforting like that. Short Lingonberry 327 says, you see yourself leave your body at the speed of light. At that moment, you realize you're passing on, and every emotion is felt. The closest depiction I've seen is when Matthew McConaughey in the movie Interstellar enters Gargantua, but you experience leaving Earth, traveling through space, and arriving at somewhere. This somewhere was dark, endless, and what I later came to find out was the void. In the void is where I was shown my life from the beginning to end in what I can only describe as stop motion. While in the void, you see everything. It's very hard to explain, but as your life is playing out, you feel that it wasn't you, like you're looking at someone else that's went through all that on Earth and they didn't know, but you do. Every tiny detail is looked at, felt, thought about, and processed. You know where you are. You have been there before. It all feels familiar and makes perfect sense now. While in the void, you're not alone, and for me, this is where I think we aren't allowed to take back the full experience. I spoke to an entity. I knew it knew me, it had authority, and I was asking it to return. It allowed me to return, and I was then back in my body. This entity, in my personal experience, was something huge. I mean, absolutely massive, golden, and shaped like one of them slinky toys, only it was square. I felt after my near-death experience, what I truly saw I couldn't bring back with me. I don't think our brains are capable of it. I'm not sure if I've seen that movie, but this is one of those stories where somebody's being shown scenes of their life. But this one has more information, including the all-knowing being that looks like some kind of golden giant square-shaped coil and has the power to command you to return. That's a really, really fascinating detail and also coincides with so many cultures and religions that believe in deities. So just yet another really interesting concept to think about. Taylap 14 says, my auntie that passed away last year at the age of 72 had to get her tonsils out in her early 20s, and something went wrong, and she started bleeding out, and she died on the table, and floated up to the center of the ceiling, viewed her body, and all the doctors scrambling to save her, and when she woke up she recalled a conversation the doctors were saying, and explained everything she could see when she was actually dead, and they were so stunned they didn't say anything, and walked out of the room. Wow, rude. Those doctors need some bedside training manners. I would have wanted to ask her more questions. Professional Heron 46 says, I had a sense of being known, as if I was surrounded by people who knew me and loved me. I was in a place that had no form, no discernible color, no reference points. It felt very safe and comfortable. I'm guessing this is the gift of the mind as you pass, and I'm not suggesting for one moment that is proof of some type of conscious afterlife. Maybe you're right, OP, that what you experienced wasn't proof of life after death, but the full workings of the human brain and death are they're mysterious, and nobody really knows except for the people that have dead, and they're not coming back and telling us. I choose to believe that it was life after death, though. What do you guys think? Do you believe in life after death? Do you have a story you'd like to share in the comments? Please share. I'd love to hear it. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit like and subscribe if you did. And if you've had any creepy paranormal encounters you'd like to share, please share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Until next time, stay safe out there and don't turn off the lights.